What are some of the biggest challenges that you are facing at ActivEngage at this point? And are those the same challenges that you think other people in your industry are facing?
Um, I mean, as far as challenges for Active Engage, we're just trying to evolve the conversations. I think the weirdest thing that's odd for us is, and this is specifically an Active Engage thing, which is, so we've been doing this longer than anybody else who's
Right.
in business now for
Mhm.
for automotive, and the we're people, this is all very human run, right?
Mhm.
So all the conversations are by people, and all the there's nothing where you're talking to a bot or a robot, or you're not interacting with someone who
Mhm.
has empathy for you and understands the process and has bought a car themselves before. Everybody's done that, right? So you
Yeah.
all are aware of what the difficulties are that you may be having as a customer,
Mhm.
and we're aware of what the needs are for the dealership to be able to do this effectively. Those are our customers as
Mhm.
well, the dealers and the OEMs and the manufacturers. So, to service the customer, you have to be aware of, okay, well, what do they need to be able to continue this process?
Mhm.
And there are things out there. The AI is a great tool, and we are building things like that into our system, or have built pieces of it into our system, and I think it's how you leverage that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
um, that makes it valuable or not. Where it's not valuable is on the front end of a conversation, where the bot greets the customer asks one or two questions, and you don't know it's a bot, or you kind of suspect that it is, and it immediately like doesn't really know what you're asking.
Yeah, right.
And AI wasn't really developed to talk to people. It was developed to give definitions of things, or to do searches and other things, and to be able to manage lots of data at the same time. And it's evolved into something that, there's no doubt it's going to be a communication tool. And it is effective in a lot of ways right now. The thing is knowing where to deploy it. And
Yeah.
so, we've had people come into the fray that use bots on the front end, and it for a little while it became an assumption from a lot of our potential customers that that's just what everybody did. And
To
so
kinda
that's a kind
capture
of a
them initially, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
And so
okay.
that's a differentiating piece for us, because, right from the get go, you have a live person that you're talking to. So they're going to interact with you with more depth and
Yes.
with more intention than
Mhm.
something that has no soul, no humanity. It's just,
Mhm.
it has direction,
Yeah.
and it's smart, but it doesn't
Mhm.
really, it's not feeling you. It doesn't really, understand what you're doing. It can just take in the information and spit something back out.
Mhm.
And we also know that there's huge value to that, and incorporating all those pieces into the way that we work. I don't want to tell you that we don't have it, because it's not. It's not that we don't like AI or that we don't use AI. It's more that it's being thoughtful about where it gets used, and
Yes.
what kind of information you're giving it access to convey to the customer, where it interacts with the customer, making sure as well that the customer is aware when they're talking to a bot, and aware when they're talking to a person. Because the best way to disenfranchise a customer, and there's been a million studies on this, but or maybe not literally a million, but there's been
I can
plenty.
attest to what you're about to say, yeah.
Yeah, that, if you start chatting or texting or whatever, and they don't tell you that it's a bot, and then you find out it's a bot because of this kind of crappy, difficult
Yep,
interface with it,
yep.
then that customer is gone forever. They will hate you.
Mhm.
And it's not something that is effective. And
Yeah.
again, that doesn't mean that I'm against AI or machine learning. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, we have to be involved with all that stuff. It's there for efficiency, it's there for accuracy, it's there for monitoring and making sure
Mhm.
that that you're going down the right road, and it will become something that's super effective, I
Mhm.
think, for everybody to
At some
use.
point,
But
yeah.
I don't want our customers, or any customers,
Yeah.
that's kind of a fight sometimes, is, well, we don't use it on the front end. Some will say, oh, I thought everybody used it on the front end, and others will be saying, well, why don't you use it on the front end? And you have to explain it. So
Right, well, yeah.
yeah.
So you're prepared for those questions, you know you're gonna get them. It's this typical, knowing how to handle the objection, right?
No, that's
Um,
right. It's just I'd
and
rather not. That's a point where I'd rather not have to even have that conversation, right? I mean, in the very beginning of chat, this is funny. I think, in the very beginning when we were doing this, it was actually more thought that it was going to be a bot. So we used to get questions like, are you a bot? And we'd say no. And they'd say, okay, well, what's the weather like? Who
Yeah,
won the
right.
baseball game last night?
Yeah,
So
right.
they ask all kinds of
Qualifying
weird
question.
questions like that.
Yeah, right.
And now, 15, 17 years later,
That's so funny.
actually, if you were using a bot, it could probably answer those questions also.
Well, it probably could, especially if they're using ChatGPT, but again,
Right.
that's another
Yeah, right.
conversation.
That's right.
I think that, yeah, I mean, I think that the interesting thing, to your point, bot versus human, and
Mhm.
that the whole move toward chat, right? And where you're going to really piss off a customer, and they're going to say, screw you, I'm out, right?
Right.
Um, I have to wonder, and maybe it's just because I'm a Gen Xer and I'm becoming a dinosaur, but
Don't say
if I'm
that.
being facetious, that there are still things that I just don't wanna do over chat. And for me, okay, personally, like for me, that is when I need support
Right.
because of how I learn personally.
Mhm.
It's really hard for me to understand when somebody sends me an email. I'm not dyslexic, I don't have any
Right.
issues learning, but, over 50% of people, uh, 50% of receivers of the written language, be it chat or email, misinterpret the message.
No, I agree.
So
Yeah.
I have to wonder if if there is not some happy medium where both of these things can work, because sometimes some of the companies that I use, the vendors that I work with, you
Mhm.
can't get anybody ever on a phone. And
Right.
and the amount of time that it takes me, I look at what my hourly rate is
Mhm.
and I look at the amount of time I have now wasted with that person. I mean,
Right.
I have employees that can do a lot of this for me, but not everything. Sometimes I
Right.
actually need to be the one that does this. And I'm thinking to myself, I could have gotten on a phone call with you in under 5 minutes, I would have had the problem solved. This has now taken days of back and
Right.
forth. So I'm wondering if I'm not the only one experiencing things like that, but you are talking to, and I'm talking to a live person when I'm doing that, or
Mhm.
communicating with a live person. If there isn't, what about people like me who, this kind of solution is not an effective solution, for example?
Well, I mean,
I don't know.
so, as far as my company is concerned, if you're asking about us, then, if you're asking about in general, then I'll answer that, I guess, in the second half, because there are
Yeah.
things about it that can be satisfied. If you're asking about us specifically, then, we cross into all the different mediums, so we can
Yes.
deal with phone and other things like that. We have
Yeah.
video, two-way video, and all the stuff that
It's
goes along with that.
fabulous. Yep.
So, and it's, and it's the learning and using of all the data from all the different conversations that we're having to be able to evolve each type of conversation to be the best that it can be. Now, at the same time, I think that, there it definitely is, the technology of doing it and doing it effectively and doing it securely and doing it, as an enterprise solution. Some of our customers are, quite large, like General
Mhm.
Motors
Mhm.
and AutoNation and, all these guys, Auto Trader. um, they, the technology is significant and important. And so, as a chat company or a messaging company, we have a lot more going on in the background than, probably the average kind of chat or text company.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's also this art form, right? And so we've talked about it a little bit, and the way that you communicate, the context clues that you have. I mean, just like if you're, I'm sure that and I'm going to use car sales because I think that's what I know. And, when you meet a car salesperson that you love and they're great and they're interactive with you
Yeah.
and they seem to kind of know what you want without telling you what you want, right? They kind of understand, what you're looking for or what your needs are, and they're there to service you, and you feel satisfied with the interaction. That's that is a very human characteristic, and it's the creative side of who you are that handles that. And so there is a style, almost like an artistic style to understanding how to communicate. And so what I think that you're referring to, and you can certainly correct me if I'm
Mhm.
wrong, but when I get emails or communications that are flat and cold or complicated or difficult verbiage or,
Yeah.
any of those things, then I feel a little disenfranchised. I don't feel
Yeah.
like they really know me. I don't feel like they're trying to know me. I don't feel like, I'm necessarily being heard or understood.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm reading a communication, and sometimes if I'm reading a communication that's overly simplified, especially in an email, that's not the place for it.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems a little superficial. But if you know the context of the medium that you're using, I'm on Facebook, I'm on an email, I'm
Mm-hmm.
actually on a text, or I'm on the website of a big company and I'm talking. So if you understand where you are and the communication that you're using through that medium is justified by that medium, it's as formal as it needs to be, but not more. And you have
Mm-hmm.
this, you can create this connection, right? Our job is to create this relationship, this connection with the customer. If we can't do that, then we can't really move the customer through it. And the customer is not going to feel satisfied. And so, we,
Mm-hmm.
and just to kind of tout our own horn a little bit, our conversion when someone's just on a site and they're navigating around and they don't even know necessarily that they're ready to look for a vehicle or look to get service or do whatever they're going to
Mm-hmm.
do. Our conversion from this person with kind of a blank mind into getting them converted to a lead where we have name and phone number and we know that they're looking
Mm-hmm.
for this car and they have a trade and all that kind of stuff, it's 80%.
Mm-hmm.
So 4 out of 5. Okay,
Wow, that's
the
amazing.
standard in the industry is roughly 60% of that. So, to
Mm-hmm.
get there, it's about being present, being mindful of what's going on, paying attention. It would be like fighting through this interview and not listening to
Yeah.
the questions that you're asking and just sort of saying what I want to say. And
Mhm.
that's it. And you're going to
Yeah.
hear what I
Yeah.
have to say and it doesn't matter
Yeah.
what you're asking. And,
Mm-hmm.
it's not,
Yeah.
no one likes that and no one feels good about that. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that, and at least from our experience, that if you're reading, even if you're reading text for someone like you who you don't really love text and or you don't love text-based communication, you want to have some jostling around, some interaction. If it's someone's handling it the right way, then I'm sure you've had communications or text with your friends or with your family and it goes fine and you actually kind of feel like it goes on longer than maybe even it should have. And it's because you're
Yeah, right.
comfortable with that scenario, but
Mm-hmm.
you're not comfortable in the business atmosphere, and it's probably not you. It's like it's not me, it's them. It's not you, it is them. And it's because they don't really understand how to have that conversation. And I believe that if you do, I believe
Right.
strongly that if you
Yeah.
do, then you don't have to fight the fight or have the concern that a
Yeah.
customer like you will not correspond in the right way.
Carol Schultz here. Thanks for watching this excerpt from Authentically Successful. The conversation doesn't end there. So if you want to hear this episode in full and all my conversations with many other successful founders and CEOs, please visit verticalelevation.com/podcast.